Evicting a tenant is never an easy thing to do, but if you have a property in the state of Iowa and this becomes necessary, it's important to complete the eviction the right way. Otherwise, you could face legal fines, and a problematic tenant could be allowed to stay inside the unit. But don't worry, because this video covers every Iowa eviction law you need to know, including step-by-step instructions for completing a legally valid eviction. But before we move forward, we just want to note that this video doesn't constitute legal advice. It's always a good idea to contact a lawyer if you believe you need to evict a tenant. But hopefully, this video will give you a good overview. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get started. The first thing to know about evicting a tenant in Iowa is that you can only do so if you have a legally valid reason to do so. There are 5 of those that landlords can use. Now first, if a tenant has missed their rent payment and exceeded the grace period, that's a legally valid reason to evict. But you need to give the tenant an official 3-day notice to pay before filing eviction paperwork. You can also evict a tenant for violating their lease agreement. However, this requires a 7-day notice to comply from landlords. If at the end of those 7 days, the issue remains unresolved, you have to give the tenant a 3-day notice to quit before filing a complaint. Now, a notice to quit essentially tells the tenant that they need to move out by the specified date because of the seriousness of the violation. And whether the tenant obliges with this notice or not, you will likely need to complete the eviction process in court to regain full possession of the unit. Conducting illegal activity is another valid reason to evict a tenant. When this happens, Iowa lets you immediately issue a 3-day notice to quit. You don't have to give an opportunity for the tenant to fix the problem. Next up, you may have to evict a tenant in Iowa for a serious health and safety violation. This can include things like not throwing out trash for long periods of time and attracting bugs or rodents, damaging the electrical wiring of a unit, and ruining the plumbing fixtures of a unit. When these things happen, you have to give the tenant a 7-day notice to comply so that they have an opportunity to fix the issue. If the issue remains unfixed at the end of that period, you can give the tenant a 3-day notice to quit. Finally, Iowa landlords are allowed to simply not renew a lease once it reaches its natural conclusion. If this happens, you need to send out a notice to quit before the lease expires. Now, this is typically a 30-day notice to quit, but it can vary based on the structure of the lease and the county you live in. So, now we've covered why you can evict a tenant in Iowa, let's look at the step-by-step instructions to actually do so. First, you have to issue a notice to comply. The length and type of this notice you need to provide varies depending on the reasons for the eviction and also the county's laws where the property is located. If you've issued the required notice to comply and the tenant ignored it or failed to fix the issue, then you'll be ready to file a complaint with the courts. The requirements for your complaint can also vary based on the court's rules in the property's jurisdiction, but you'll typically have to pay a filing fee of the document and give the reason why you're left with no other option but to evict the tenant. With your complaint filed, the next step is ensuring that the tenant knows about the impending court case against them. This is a process called serving the tenant, and it's one that you need to complete at least 3 days before the eviction hearing is scheduled. There are a few different ways to serve a tenant in a legally valid way. Personal service, which involves handling the summons and complaint to the tenant directly. Just keep in mind that this can't be done by a landlord or their lawyer. If personal service isn't an option, you can go with substituted service. This means handing the documents to either a family member or anyone who lives with the tenant who is over 16 years of age. And if that doesn't work either, you can serve the tenant by posting and mailing the documents. This typically means posting the documents on the tenant's door, but it can be anywhere that is secure and visible by the tenant's entrance of their property. If you use this method, you also have to mail the documents to the tenant via first-class certified mail. Once the tenant has received their summons and the court date has been scheduled, you'll be ready to file a motion to obtain judgment. This is your legal justification for evicting the tenant, and it needs to be supported by solid evidence. At this point, one of 2 things can happen. If the tenant doesn't show up to court date, then you can win the case by default. If they do show up, then they'll have an opportunity to present a counter-argument as to why they shouldn't be evicted. When tenants present an effective counter-argument, you may be asked to present further evidence to support your claims. This can include copies of the lease document, rent receipts, bank statements, witnesses, and photo and video documentation. Once both of you have had the chance to present your arguments, the judge will make a ruling. And this usually will be in your favor if you do have a legally valid reason to evict the tenant. Just keep in mind that the law gives tenants and landlords 20 days to appeal an initial eviction ruling. That means that the initial court decision may not be 100% final. Now, assuming you win the case, you'll receive a writ of execution immediately. This gives the tenant 3 days to vacate the property. The most important thing to note here is that you can't remove the tenant by force or conduct a self-help eviction by shutting off their utilities. If the tenant doesn't leave by the end of the 3-day notice, only the sheriff or proper authorities can remove them from the property physically. If they have any of their belongings left behind at that point, the landlords are usually advised to contact the tenant and give them an opportunity to reclaim the items in a reasonable time frame. But there are no laws about this in Iowa. So there you have it. That's everything you need to know about conducting a legal eviction in Iowa. As you probably realized, maintaining solid evidence is a super important part of completing a legally valid eviction. If you're looking for a smoother way to organize this type of evidence, then DoorLoop may be a good fit for you. You can sign up for a free demo on our website to learn more about how it can make things easier for you. But whatever you choose to do, we hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more videos just like this, and we'll see you in the next one. Until next time.